Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Dierig, and today we're going to talk about the welcoming prayer. And the title is Inviting the Presence of God into Everyday Moments. So, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of this. Diane, you've been great. Father Scott, thank you. And I know Kathy gave a talk last week or the week before on centering prayer. And really, these two practices are like two wings of a bird. They just balance each other out. They both give weight to your life. And um, yeah, they're really just companion practices and really should be practiced together. Both of them have, one has the effect of sitting in silence and allowing the unconscious to come up, and the other is what we do for the other 23 hours of the day. So, one thing that Thomas Keating says, I'll read a little quote, is that the reason centering prayer isn't as effective as when you emerge from it into ordinary routines of daily life, your emotional programs start going off again. If you work at dismantling the energy centers that cause the upsetting emotions, your efforts will extend the good effects of centering prayer into every aspect of our lives. That's from Open Mind, Open Heart. Um, I saw a quote by Ilia Diallo. She's one of my favorite authors. I really like her. She says that if we want a different world, we must become different people. And I think that's really pretty appropriate now as we think about today is election day. I'm recording this on election day, and there's so much anxiety that goes along with, our election, the period up to this time, and even afterwards. Then there's also the pandemic that's going on that causes us anxiety, and that's going to be with us for a time. And that's not to mention just what happens in our everyday life, all the ups and downs, upsetting emotions that come into our life, and we actually quite powerless over much of this stuff, and to a certain degree we that there's a lot of things that we don't have much control over, but as Elia says, can become different people, and the change can happen within us, and that's what the welcoming prayer practice is about. It's about this transformation that happens by starting a new way of listening that comes from our whole being, not just the conceptual mind. It starts with the wisdom of the body. And so that's what we're talking about today. Um, I, I guess if we're talking about this prayer, I'd want to start out with talking about Mary Marzalski. And she's really the person that we consider the spiritual mother of the welcoming prayer practice. Um, Let me read a quote from her. She says, if we have a mind that tells us we're always right, everybody else is wrong, but we are right. Then we have these emotions that validate those thoughts. And what we need to do is let go of whatever is happening on an interior level and surrender so we can see reality in what is actually happening instead of perceiving it through our thoughts and feelings. So Mary developed this practice along with Thomas Keating after she had read a book called Abandonment to Divine Providence. It's by a French priest from back in the 18th century. Um, and he says that the duties of each moment are the shadows beneath which hides the divine operation. So Mary passed on back in 1993. but we consider the welcoming prayer practice as her lasting gift to contemplative outreach. So today we'll be talking about the human condition. We'll talk about the false self system, or I like to call it the homemade self. It's a self that we've made up on our own, and how the welcoming prayer practice can redirect our energies. So the human condition, you can describe it as to be without the experience, without the source of happiness, which is the experience of the presence of God. It's a universal illness that afflicts all of humanity. Everybody experiences the same human condition. And there's three things about the human condition that Thomas Keating talks about. The first is that, number one, it's an illusion. We think that we have to have control of everything, that we're going to control our kids, we're going to control our relationship, and none of that's true. It's really an illusion of control. And so that illusion is not knowing where to find happiness. So we look for it in that kind of control. The second is concupiscence, and that's the pursuit of happiness where it cannot be found. I'm sure everybody's heard of the song "Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places." Well, that's what we're talking about. We look for happiness to be provided in relationships. We look for it, and we think this is next thing. It's always the next thing. It's the money. It's whatever it is that's going to make us happy, but it never does. And then the third thing is the weakness of will. It's that inability to pursue happiness where it can be found. So scriptures talk about this. St. Paul says, "Why do I do what I don't want to do? And why don't I do what I desire to do?" So can anybody relate to that? I know I can. But when we talk about the human condition, we're born with it, and it's with us till our physical bodies are gone. But the thing that we have to remember as we start out talking about this is just our basic goodness that we all have. Thomas Keating says that one's own basic goodness is always inviting you to be fully human and open to the goodness of all creation. So it's really the acceptance of this basic core of goodness. When we come into the world where we really have no separation from the divine. But as we grow older and as we go through development, we have these values that we pick up and these attitudes and preoccupations, perspectives from our family and from our culture and nation and the world that we pick up and take residence in the unconscious. And then these eclipse our sense of oneness with God. So eventually we come to believe that we are separated from God, and then we start living our lives that way, as if that were true. And when we talk about the human condition, part of it is to accept the reality that God is part of our DNA. Thomas Keating says, if God isn't animating us in every millisecond of the day, we would turn into a grease puddle. And it doesn't matter what psychological material is going through our head at any given moment. God is always present, and we have this present that's innate in us. And so a quantum leap, I would say, is when we're able to accept that and believe that. There's three in all of Keating's teachings throughout his life, he's always like focused on these three energy centers. It's security, survival, affection and control, and power and control, affection and esteem, safety and security. Those are the three energy centers that you could say they're really our biological needs. And they're really the basic motivations for everything we do. Um, we wouldn't be able to survive infancy if we didn't have these basic instincts. So really, they're a normal part of our development. There's no need to judge them as being good or bad. They're just what our instinctual needs are. But as we begin to grow up, the need to hide pain that we suffered as in early life and we can't face, we repress it into the unconscious, um, and provide the parent freedom from pain or develop compensatory processes to access pleasure to offset the pain that we're not ready to face. So good and evil are no longer judged on their objective reality, but by the way we perceive them fitting into our private universe. And then integral to the human condition is free will. We can make choices in our lives. Some of them are out of our own willfulness and mind misguidedness without regard to the presence of God. It can deny life. We can wound others and ourselves and can cause immeasurable pain and suffering. So, along with the human condition is our ability to make choices in our lives. So, the unconscious is a place where all experiences um, can can be repressed, um, as a way of providing freedom from pain. They're compensating for deprivations in the beginning as we create this false self or this false image of ourselves. And the underlying unconscious repressed material, these wounds of a lifetime, are still there, always there. They're influencing our behaviors and causing us pain, whether it's great or small. And the body is actually the warehouse where all of this, you know, Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body. So the body is absorbing in our tissues all this repressed material. So it's not hard to see that this is the beginning of the addictive process that basically started in early life and with our need to hide pain that we suffered in early life and could not face. So, and it continues to influence our behavior. So there's all this stuff that we've repressed. And really, the false self is never an accurate image of ourselves. We um, rarely have this accurate picture. It's the self that we create in our own mind, and then we project this self onto others. And some of us are really good at doing that. There's something I wanted to read out of it's out of the what's called the 12 and 12 from Alcoholics Anonymous. And Bill Wilson writes exactly what Thomas Keating is talking about with these instinctual needs. And he says that he calls it our predicament. And he says that these instincts, so necessary for our existence, often far exceed their proper function. Powerfully, blindly, many times subtly, they drive us, dominate us, and insist on ruling our lives. Our desires for sex, for material, for emotional security, and for an important place in society, often tyrannize us. No human being, however good, is exempt from these troubles. nearly every serious and emotional problem can be seen as a case of misdirected instincts. So I think, that really sums it up well, that it's not that these instinctual needs are bad or good. It's just that they far exceed what they're intended for. So Thomas Keating says, if we do not assume responsibility for our emotional programs on the unconscious level and take measures to change them, we'll be influenced them to the ends of our lives. He says this in his book, The Mystery of Christ. So we need to have this practice of transformation, and that's what we're going to talk about is the method of the welcoming prayer. So just like centering prayer, the welcoming prayer is a prayer of consent, and it's addressing these wounds of a lifetime. It's addressing these obstacles that are in our way, that challenge us every day of our lives, and it challenges them where they are. They're in our body, and we say that the issue is in the tissue, and that's exactly where we store them, and that's exactly where this prayer addresses them. So we say our bodies is the place where we meet God, and it's an essential part of our spiritual journey. If we want to transcend the finite limits of our body, we can only do so through our bodies and the experiences of our bodies we are having on this earth. A lot of times in Western culture, we tend to disregard the importance of body, mind, spirit, all three things being one. And this prayer is such a beautiful way of getting back to incorporating all of this into our being. So I'll go through what the three movements of the welcoming prayer are, and then we'll go through them one by one to dive into them a little more. The first one is to feel and sink into what you're experiencing this moment in your body. Number two is to welcome what you are experiencing this moment in your body as an opportunity to consent to the divine indwelling. And number three, let go by saying the following letting go sentence. I let go of my desire for security, affection, and control. I embrace this moment as it is. So those are the three movements. Let's start back at number one, the first movement, where we say we feel and sink in to what you're experiencing this moment in your body. So when you're noticing or focusing on your body, some physical reaction to an event, maybe you're driving and somebody pisses you off, or maybe there's some situation that's causing you to clench your jaw, or maybe you have this pounding headache or a knot in your gut. There's all these places in your body that store these emotions. And so we're just allowing ourselves to feel the feeling in your body and be able to stay with that emotion while you need to work with it. So it's focusing, but feel and sink into what you're experiencing this moment in your body. We don't run from it. We don't analyze it. We're not thinking about it. We're just allowing ourselves to be with that feeling. And this is really something we're not used to doing. We're used to thinking about the thinking about the feeling rather than feeling the feeling. So that's what we're first off doing, is sinking into it. Thomas Keating says it's like stepping into a warm jacuzzi. So think of yourself just getting into the jacuzzi and letting the warm waters rush all through you. And then the second movement is the welcoming part. Thomas also says that we really have to have a welcoming, a friendlier attitude toward these emotions. And that's where the welcoming comes in, this learning to have, this hospitality toward these emotions that we really don't like. None of us like having anger. None of us like having jealousy. None of us like having lust, but, if we learn to have a friendlier attitude, they're not going to be, it takes the power out of them. So we welcome what you're experiencing this moment in your body as an opportunity to consent to the divine indwelling. We repeat it silently as we would just like the sacred word in centering prayer. We say it softly, and it's our symbol of consent to the presence of the divine indwelling. And we aren't welcoming, this is very important to remember, we're not welcoming what's happening, what the circumstance is, but we're welcoming what's happening inside of us, how we're reacting to it. So if somebody says something to us that sets us off, we're not just rolling over and being doormats. We're welcoming how it's affecting us. If we feel it in our shoulders, if we feel it in our gut, if we feel it in our head, wherever, we're just welcoming that feeling and the experience that we're having right now in our bodies. And then finally, the third movement, we're saying the letting go sentence. I let go of my desire for security, affection, and control, and embrace this moment as it is, which is great. I mean, to be able to say, I embrace this moment as it is, because I don't know about you, but I'm used to running from every emotion that comes my way. I want to turn on the radio. I want to go get something to eat. I want to do whatever, however I can get out of this feeling. But we're embracing this moment as it is. And that's really everything. I mean, being present to this is being present to God. I mean, that's where it is. That's where it happens in this present moment. It doesn't happen in the past. It doesn't happen in the future. It happens right now in this present moment. So this, it's important that you memorize this part of it, the letting go sentence. Just memorize it exactly as it is. Don't try to change the words, because the emphasis isn't so much on the words, because we're trying to stay with the feeling in our body, but we're just sending this message to the intellect about these motivations that, the three instincts that we talked about before, our security, affection, and control. We're just sending a message there, and we're not analyzing which energy center it is. We're trying to stay with the feeling in our body. So that's the third movement. So it's important um, that the welcoming prayer, it doesn't mean that you're taking no action, but that you're able to choose your response to the situation without encumbrance of the past woundedness. So those three movements, I think the best way is if we just take a few minutes and actually practice. And it would be great if you have something that's been recent that's caused a reaction in you that you can bring to your memory. And if you can't, that's fine. We're just going to do a short, quick body scan. And if there's something else that you notice in your body, just stay with that body sensation. And you don't have to have some emotion attached to it. Just sink in, and to whatever you're experiencing in your body, stay with that. And so I'll just invite you to go ahead and close your eyes and just take a few deep breaths, deep gut breaths. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. And we'll just start with the intuitive eye. Start at the top of your head, at the scalp. Look around inside and see if there's tension. We look at our temples, any tension there, down to our jaws, our nostrils, any flare in our nostril or tightness in our jaws or chin, any tightness in our throat, any blockage from breathing. Is our breathing rapid, too slow? Just notice. Any tension in our shoulders, in the back of our neck. I know right now I can feel that tension in the back of my neck, in the center back there. I can even touch it, feel that tension there. Go down through our back, our lower back, our buttocks, the heaviness as we sink into our seat. Let's go up to our shoulders, down our arms, our elbows, our forearms, our hands clenched like fists. Any energy, just free energy around our hands. We'll go back up to our chest area. You notice any tightness in our chest, sinking down into our gut area. A lot of times we carry our emotions in our gut, it's gurgling in our stomachs. If you can feel anything there, just stay with that for a few moments. Go down to our hips, to our knees. Do we notice our knees are, we're shaking our knees back and forth for any reason? Just notice those kind of things. Down to our calves, the heels of our feet, bottoms of our feet. Are our toes clenched? Whatever it is in your body, just feel and sink in to what you're experiencing this moment in your body. Stay with that. Stay with that experience. And then you can begin to welcome it. Welcome, welcome. We're welcoming the divine indwelling. And then finally, we can let go by saying the following sentence. I let go of my desire for security, affection, control, and I embrace this moment as it is. Welcome. So we're not doing the welcoming prayer practice to change anybody. The other person is not the cause of our upset. They're the messenger a lot of times. We don't shoot the messenger. We learn to have this welcoming attitude. And also important to remember that we're not trying to fix any kind of situation. Some people will say, well, I tried the welcoming prayer and it didn't work. That's not the point. You know, the point is that we're experiencing what we're feeling inside our body. We're not trying to we're not fixing this so I can get out of it. We're actually learning to walk through what these emotions are. So we're not trying to fix the situation. So we have no expectations. Where change is happening on some level whenever we're doing this. We may not realize what the change is, and sometimes it feels like, why am I doing this? Nothing's happening. I mean, that's just the way we think. So don't worry about whether you feel it or not. Just always know that something is happening on some level, and you're welcoming the indwelling spirit into the present moment. And also remember again that letting go is not passivity. It brings clarity to the situation and allows us to give the appropriate response. So we're not always just reacting to what's being said or what's being done, but we're able to give a response to it. And that's the important thing. This happens to me a lot when, I can be in a meeting at work. Somebody will say something to me that just sets me off. It'll trigger this, one of those uh, security, affection, and control, one of those three instincts. It'll come in the way of fear. And, I'm sitting in this group of people, and but I can always still do the welcoming prayer regardless of where I am. We call this consent on the go. And so what I'll do is I may either look down or move my glance away from that person. I'll look into my body. I'll go to where I'm feeling it. I'll just focus in on that feeling, sink into it, try to stay with that feeling for a few moments, and then I'll welcome it. Welcome, welcome. And then I let go of my desire for security, affection, and control and embrace this moment as it is. And so that can take, 30 seconds. And then meanwhile, this person may be talking away or somebody else might be talking. I can turn to that person and I could say, could you repeat what you just said? And at that point, I could answer him in a loving but responsible way that's authentic to me, that's much more clear and true to me than if I had just reacted out of what I wanted to say in the beginning. So that's an important part to remember. And the other thing is that there's really a lot of fruits that come out of this practice that we don't always notice it. And one of them is that we get to feel our feelings. I've gotten to be much more aware of feelings that come inside of me that I never paid attention to before by practicing this prayer as a daily practice. You may notice the change in yourself, and you may also notice the change in other people because we don't always realize that when we're not practicing the human condition, other people aren't absorbing it. So, when we get out of our false self, people are a lot freer to be who they are. And so that's really one of the great fruits of this practice. So, um, that's what I wanted to say about the fruits of the practice. And just in closing, I'll say a few words about extending the practice and how do we keep this as a daily habitual practice in our lives. Well, one thing that you can do are these body scans. And if you practice centering prayer, that's really a great time that you can either start out with a body scan and then go into your centering prayer. You can do that in the morning, in your morning sit, same thing in your afternoon sit, and just go through your whole body. Or, later as you get used to that, you can just go right to where you're feeling some kind of emotion and work with that, sit for that a few minutes, and then go into your centering prayer. I I use it. I use it all through the day. I use it when I'm driving. I use it to react when my partner may say something to me. I may use it at work. There's all kinds of opportunities that I find to use the welcoming prayer throughout the day. But one time that I find especially helpful is in the evening when I might sit down on the couch and I watch TV or watch the news or something. I start to just do this welcoming of these emotions that seem kind of, they come up at a time when I'm starting to relax. And there's this feeling of just some kind of anxiety that might come up. And I start to welcome that. And I'll just go through the whole welcoming prayer, and then something else may come up. I'll welcome that. But that's always a good time for me, and that's really helped me tremendously by just picking this one time during the day when I always do the practice. So you can also like put notes. I have a note on my computer screen that says scan. I do a scan when I'm putting my tea in the microwave and waiting for the water to boil. I mean, there's all kinds of creative ways that you can come up with of how to remember to do this practice. But, we have this resistance that, where we don't want, the false self really doesn't want to do this practice. And so we'll come up with all kinds of ways of resisting by, turning the radio on when it's an opportunity to welcome, or we'll, let's see, I think I'll change the words to this. That's another way of resistance. But, we just need to continually practice, practice, practice. I've given you just some basics about the welcoming prayer practice, but you'll want to, like, if there's any other opportunities to go to another workshop or go through an online course or something like that, take that opportunity, because those things always help me to deepen my practice and be able to just get more and more benefits from doing it. The more I do practice. So that's, thank you very much. I wish you happy welcoming, and especially in this time when we sincerely need it. The change happens from within. All change comes from within. There is one final admonishment that Mary Marzowski always said. She says, "Do you want to be right or do you want to be free?" And, I know deep down I want to be free. And that's what the welcoming prayer brings us. So thank you very much.